They called it the Great Silence. Across 17 star systems, spanning a trade network that had flourished for over 3 millennia, every communication relay went dark in the span of 72 hours. No distress signals, no final transmissions, just silence. The Galactic Council's emergency session lasted 6 rotations, with representatives from 47 species debating theories. Solar flares? Impossible across such distance. Coordinated terrorist attack? Who could organize something so vast? Ancient weapon activation? The archaeological teams found nothing. But Ambassador Zixthala of the hegemony knew the truth, even as she sat in the gleaming council chambers, her crystalline form refracting the light of distant stars. She knew because she had been there when it started. She had watched the human delegation stand up from the negotiation table after 6 months of peaceful discussions about humanity's proper place in galactic society. She remembered the exact words of the human ambassador, spoken in that peculiar flat tone they used when they were done pretending to be reasonable. We tried asking nicely. That was 3 weeks ago. Now, as emergency fleets disappeared into the void of the affected systems without a trace, as trade routes that had existed since before Earth's sun was born simply ended, the Council was beginning to understand something that Ambassador Zixthala had tried to warn them about. Humans didn't make idle threats. They just stopped talking and got to work. Captain Elena Vasquez had been staring at the same diplomatic briefing for 3 hours, and her patience was wearing thin like old metal under stress. The words blurred together on the holographic display floating above her desk aboard the Earth vessel Prometheus, humanity's flagship in the Kepler 442 system. 6 months. 6 months of sitting in sterile conference rooms, with beings who breathed different air and thought in mathematical concepts that hurt her head. All for the privilege of discussing humanity's integration parameters into galactic society. The phrase itself made her teeth ache.
Captain, came the voice of her communications officer through the ship's intercom. Ambassador Chen requests your presence in Conference Room 7. Priority Alpha.
Elena closed her eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages, a habit she'd picked up during her years serving on mixed-species vessels. It didn't help much anymore. The corridors of the Prometheus hummed with the quiet efficiency that marked all human vessels. No crystal singing like the crystalry ships. No bioluminescent patterns like the Mycelial Confederation's living craft. Just clean metal and the soft whisper of recycled air. Elena had always found it comforting, but today it felt confining. Conference Room 7 was one of the smaller meeting spaces, designed for delicate conversations. When Elena entered, she found Ambassador Chen sitting across from a being that looked like someone had tried to sculpt a tree from liquid mercury and given up halfway through. The hegemony representative, Coordinator Fluxonom, shifted and flowed as it spoke, its voice emerging from speakers that had been genetically grown rather than built.
Captain Vasquez, Ambassador Chen said, his diplomatic smile tight around the edges. Coordinator Fluxum was just explaining the hegemony's concerns about our industrial output in the Tau Ceti system. Elena took a seat and studied the alien coordinator.
The hegemony had been the most vocal critics of human expansion, citing everything from environmental contamination to aggressive resource extraction patterns. What they really meant, Elena knew, was that humans worked too fast and asked too few questions. Coordinator, Elena said, her voice carefully neutral. What seems to be the specific issue? The mercury tree being pulsed, its form rippling with what Elena had learned to recognize as agitation. Your species has established 17 mining operations in a system that our surveys indicated could support, at maximum, 4 sustainable extraction points. You are... how do you say, consuming the system. It doesn't mean that it's about huge... Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. I'm sorry, did you say your surveys? Tau Ceti is a human-discovered system. We've had mining rights there for 8 years. Discovery rights and optimal utilization rights are different concepts, Fluxonom replied, its form becoming more solid, more tree-like. Elena recognized this as a defensive posture. The hegemony has filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Council regarding human industrial practices in 7 systems. Ambassador Chen's smile didn't waver, but Elena saw his knuckles go white where he gripped his tablet. 7 systems? This is the first I'm hearing about other complaints. The formal notifications were submitted through proper channels, Fluxnom said. Perhaps human communication protocols are less efficient than assumed. Elena stood up slowly. In her years of military service, she had learned that some conversations were best conducted on equal footing, and she was beginning to suspect this was one of them. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said, her voice dropping to the tone she used when explaining obvious things to new recruits. "You're telling us that you filed complaints about human activities and systems that we discovered, explored, and have been operating in for years, but you didn't bother to inform us directly. The Galactic Council is the appropriate mediating body for interspecies disputes." Fluxnam replied, its mercury-like substance beginning to flow more rapidly.
Human representatives are, of course, free to respond to the Council's inquiries when they are issued. Elena felt her jaw clench. Behind the polite words and diplomatic protocols, she was hearing something that made her military instincts prickle with warning.
This wasn't a complaint. This was a setup. Coordinator Fluxanam, Ambassador Chen, said, his diplomatic training keeping his voice level. "Surely we can work out these concerns through direct negotiation. There's no need to involve the Council in what amounts to a simple misunderstanding about industrial capacity." The alien's form shifted, becoming more humanoid, which Elena knew was meant to be a conciliatory gesture. It had the opposite effect. "I fear the misunderstanding runs deeper than industrial capacity," Fluxnam said. "The hegemony, along with our allies in the Crystalline Compact and the Neo-Aquatic Federation, believe that humanity's expansion patterns indicate a fundamental incompatibility with galactic civilization standards." There it was. Elena felt the cold in her stomach spread upward, reaching her chest. This wasn't about mining quotas or environmental concerns. This was about whether humans deserved to be in space at all.
"What exactly are you suggesting?" Elena asked. "A moratorium." Fluxanam replied, its form solidifying into something that looked almost human except for the way light bent around its edges.
"A temporary halt to human expansion while the Council establishes appropriate guidelines for species integration. Perhaps a 50-year study period to determine optimal human settlement patterns." Elena's vision went very clear, the way it always did before combat. 50 years. 2 human generations. Long enough for every other species to carve up the galaxy between themselves while humanity sat in their home system like well-behaved children. Ambassador Chen's diplomatic smile was becoming strained. "That seems like a rather extreme measure for what you've described as industrial optimization issues. The hegemony does not act from malice," Fluxnam said, and Elena almost believed it meant that. "But human expansion proceeds at a rate that concerns many species. Your mining operations, your colony ships, your military vessels, all operate on timescales that seem aggressive by galactic standards."
Aggressive? Elena repeated. "We mine resources we need, establish colonies on worlds that can support our people, and maintain defensive fleets to protect our interests."
"That's what every species does. Every species operates within accepted parameters," Fluxnam corrected. "The Crystari take 3 solar cycles to establish a mining operation. The Mycelial Confederation spends 5 cycles studying ecosystem integration before establishing colonies. Humans, your Tau Ceti operation went from survey to full production in 11 months. Elena stared at the alien coordinator. 11 months to set up mining equipment on dead rocks orbiting a star. "You think that's aggressive?" "We think it indicates a mindset incompatible with galactic civilization," Fluxnam said, and now its voice carried the harmonics that Elena recognized as finality. "The Council will be voting on the moratorium proposal in 14 standard days." The room went very quiet. Elena could hear the soft hum of the ship's systems, the distant whisper of air recyclers, the almost inaudible vibration of the fusion reactors that powered human civilization's reach into the stars. All of it suddenly seemed fragile. 14 days. Ambassador Chen repeated slowly. "That doesn't leave much time for negotiation." "The decision has been extensively debated," Fluxnam replied. "Human representatives will, of course, have the opportunity to present their position to the Council." Elena found herself thinking about the Tau Ceti system, about the 17 mining operations that were feeding rare earth elements back to human worlds, supporting colonies, keeping the expansion moving. She thought about the families who had committed everything to new lives on distant worlds, trusting that humanity's reach into the stars was permanent. "And if we refuse to accept this moratorium?" she asked. Fluxnam's form rippled, becoming less solid. "The Council has enforcement mechanisms for species that cannot integrate peacefully with galactic civilization." Elena felt something snap inside her chest, like a cable under too much tension finally giving way. "Enforcement mechanisms. Economic sanctions," Fluxnam said. "Restrictions on access to galactic trade routes. Quarantine of aggressive species until they demonstrate readiness for peaceful coexistence." "You're talking about a blockade," Elena said flatly. We prefer the term protective isolation, Fluxnom replied. Elena looked at Ambassador Chen, saw the careful diplomatic mask slipping enough to show the anger underneath. She looked back at the alien coordinator, this being who spoke of 50-year studies in protective isolation like they were discussing the weather. Coordinator Fluxnom, Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Do you know what humans did the last time someone tried to quarantine us? The alien's form stilled. I am not familiar with your species' historical conflicts. Elena smiled and felt Ambassador Chen tense beside her.
We stopped being polite, she said. We stopped asking permission.
We stopped pretending that cooperation was the same thing as submission. Captain, Ambassador Chen said quietly, a warning in his voice. But Elena was beyond warnings now. She was thinking about her crew, about the families in the Tau Ceti system, about the children who would grow up believing that humanity's place in the galaxy was whatever other species decided to allow them. You want to know about human expansion patterns? Elena asked, standing up. We expand because we have to, because our people need places to live and work and build futures for their children. We move fast because we've learned that the universe doesn't wait for anyone, and we mine quickly because our families need those resources to survive. Fluxum's form was becoming more liquid again, a sign of stress. These justifications do not address the concerns of galactic civilization. Galactic civilization, Elena repeated. Tell me, Coordinator, how long has galactic civilization existed? The current Galactic Council has maintained peace for over 4,000 years, Fluxnom replied.
4,000 years of peace, Elena said. And in all that time, how many new species have been admitted to full membership? The alien hesitated.
Integration is a complex process. How many? Elena pressed. 17 species have achieved full council recognition in the past 4 millennia. Elena felt Ambassador Chen's sharp intake of breath beside her. 17 species in 4,000 years, less than 1 every 2 centuries. And how many species have been subjected to protective isolation during that time? Elena asked. Fluxnom's form was flowing rapidly now, stress patterns rippling through its mercury-like substance. I do not have access to those statistics. Elena studied the alien coordinator for a long moment. The hegemony were traders, negotiators, beings who had built their civilization on careful deals and patient planning. They thought, in centuries, moved with deliberate caution, and valued stability above all else. They had made one critical miscalculation. Coordinator Fluxnom, Elena said, I want you to understand something about humans. We've been fighting for our survival since before we developed language. We've been expanding into hostile environments since before we invented writing. We've been taking resources from places that didn't want to give them up since before we reached our own moon. She leaned forward, her hands flat on the conference table. You think 50 years is a reasonable time frame for studying us? We think 50 years is enough time for our children to grow up in a galaxy where they have to ask permission to exist. The alien's form had gone almost completely liquid, flowing and shifting with obvious distress. Captain, you are speaking of matters that require careful consideration. No, Elena said, cutting it off. You're right about one thing, Coordinator. Human expansion does proceed at a rate that might seem aggressive by galactic standards. But what you don't understand is that this isn't aggression. This is just humans getting things done. She stood up, and Ambassador Chen rose with her, his diplomatic training warring with something harder in his eyes. You have 14 days to present your case to the Council, Elena said. I suggest you use that time wisely. Fluxnom's speakers crackled with harmonics that Elena didn't recognize, probably stress vocalizations in whatever passed for the hegemony's natural language. Captain, I hope you understand the seriousness of these proceedings. Elena stopped at the door and looked back. Coordinator, I hope you understand that humans don't respond well to threats.
As she left the conference room, Alina was already composing messages in her head.
To the mining operations in Tau Ceti, to the colony ships en route to distant systems, to the fleet commanders scattered across human space, the hegemony thought they were dealing with just another species that could be managed, contained, regulated into compliance. They were about to learn the difference between humans asking nicely and humans getting things done. In 14 days, the Galactic Council would vote on whether humanity deserved a place among the stars. Elena Vasquez was already planning for the day after that vote, The Galactic Council chambers had been designed to inspire awe. Floating in the zero-gravity zone at the center of Station Prime, the massive spherical hall could accommodate representatives from hundreds of species, each in their preferred atmospheric mix and gravity wells. Crystalline beings hung from geometric anchor points, gas-based life forms swirled in specialized containment fields, and the more conventional oxygen breathers occupied the central platforms. Ambassador David Chen had spent 3 sleepless days preparing for this moment. Around him, the representatives of 47 galactic species waited in what he had learned to recognize as barely contained anticipation. They thought they were about to witness humanity's submission to galactic authority. They were wrong. The chair recognizes the human delegation, announced Council Prime Zixthala, her crystalline form refracting light across the chamber in patterns that human eyes couldn't quite follow. Her voice, translated through quantum resonance into sounds that each species could understand, carried the weight of 4 millennia of galactic law. Chen activated his personal gravity field and rose to the speaking platform, feeling the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. Behind him, Captain Vasquez sat with the rest of the human delegation, her expression unreadable. "Honored Council," Chen began, his words automatically translated into every language and communication method represented in the chamber. "Humanity stands before you today not to defend our right to exist among the stars, but to clarify a fundamental misunderstanding about our nature." A ripple of movement went through the assembled delegates. The hegemony's coordinator, Fluxnob, shifted form in what Chen had learned to recognize as confusion. This wasn't the beginning they had expected. "For 6 months," Chen continued, "we have sat in conference rooms and negotiation chambers, listening to concerns about our expansion rate, our industrial practices, our military readiness. We have nodded politely while being lectured about galactic civilization and our duty to conform to established standards." Chen touched a control on his podium, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing star charts and industrial data. "You want to discuss our expansion patterns? Very well. In the past 50 years, humanity has established mining operations in 23 systems, agricultural colonies in 15 systems, and maintained exploration fleets, active in over 100 systems. The hegemony calls this aggressive. The Crystalline Compact calls it destabilizing. The Neo-Aquatic Federation calls it incompatible with galactic peace." The display shifted, showing comparative data from other species. By contrast, in the same 50-year period, the hegemony has established 3 new trading posts. The Crystalline Compact has added 1 mining system to their territory, and the Neo-Aquatic Federation has expanded their borders by precisely 0 systems. Chen let that sink in before continuing. "So yes, humanity expands faster than you do. We build faster than you do. We adapt faster than you do. The question before this council is whether that makes us a threat to galactic civilization, or whether galactic civilization has simply forgotten what growth looks like." Coordinator Fluxnam's form began shifting more rapidly, and Chen saw several other delegates displaying what their xenobiology briefings had taught him were signs of agitation. "The human delegation has had 14 days to consider the hegemony's proposal for a 50-year moratorium on human expansion," Chen said. "We have reviewed the evidence, consulted with our people, and reached a decision." The chamber fell silent. Chen could hear the subtle hum of atmosphere recyclers, the whisper of gravity field generators, the distant vibration of Station Prime's massive rotation, all the sounds of galactic civilization functioning smoothly, peacefully, safely. "We decline," Chen said simply. The reaction was immediate. Harmonic outcries from the crystally, rapid flow communications between hegemony delegates, bioluminescent flashing from the mycelial representatives. Council Prime Zixthala had to activate the sonic dampening fields to restore order. "Ambassador Chen," she said once the chamber had quieted, "you understand that this council has the authority to enforce its decisions regarding threats to galactic peace?" Chen nodded. "We understand your authority, Prime Zixthala. We also understand that you're about to make a decision that will fundamentally change the nature of human participation in galactic affairs." He touched another control, and the holographic displays changed to show shipping lane maps, trade route data, and resource flowcharts. For the past 20 years, humanity has provided 37% of the rare earth elements used in galactic trade. We have maintained shipping security for the Kepler-Tau trade corridor, reducing piracy by 90 to 1%. Our industrial capacity has supplied critical components for everything from Crystari habitat crystals to hegemony bioships. Chen saw Captain Vasquez shift slightly in her seat, and he knew she was thinking the same thing he was. All of that cooperation, all of that integration with galactic civilization was about to end. We have done all of this while being told that we expand too fast, work too hard, and ask too few questions. We have tried to be good galactic citizens while being treated like children who need constant supervision. Council Prime Zixthala's crystalline form pulsed with patterns Chen had learned meant concern.
Ambassador, these contributions are valued, but they do not address the fundamental concerns about human expansion patterns.
No. Chen agreed. They don't.
Because those concerns are based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what humans are. He gestured to the displays around the chamber. You see our expansion and think of conquest. You see our industry and think of consumption. You see our fleets and think of aggression. But you're looking at human civilization through the lens of species who have had galactic peace for 4,000 years. Chen's voice grew harder. Humans have never known galactic peace. We've had to fight for every resource, every world, every breath of air we've taken outside our home system. We expand because standing still means dying. We build because our children need places to live. We maintain fleets because the universe is dangerous and no one else is going to protect us. The chamber was completely silent now. Chen could see the attention of every delegate focused on him, and he realized this might be the first time they had ever heard humans explain themselves without diplomatic doublespeak. For 6 months, we have listened to your concerns and tried to address them through negotiation and compromise. We have submitted to studies and reviews and endless committee meetings, all in the hope that we could find a way to coexist peacefully. Chen touched his podium again, and the displays disappeared. That ends today. Ambassador, Coordinator Fluxnom spoke for the first time, its form more solid than Chen had ever seen it. You cannot simply withdraw from galactic civilization. The Council has procedures. The Council has procedures for species that want to be part of galactic civilization. Chen interrupted. But you've made it clear that humans don't qualify. So we're making this simple. He looked around the chamber, meeting the optical organs, sensory apparatus, and consciousness nodes that served as eyes for 47 different species. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all Galactic Council agreements, treaties, and trade arrangements. Our mining operations, our colonies, our shipping lanes, and our military assets are now operating under human authority alone. The chamber erupted. Chen had to activate his personal force field as several delegates tried to reach the speaking platform simultaneously. Council Prime Zixthala was pulsing rapidly, her crystalline form cycling through colors Chen didn't recognize. Ambassador Chen, she called over the chaos. You cannot unilaterally withdraw from galactic civilization. The economic disruption alone will be significant, Chen agreed calmly. 37% of rare earth elements gone. Security for the Kepler Tau corridor withdrawn. Industrial capacity for critical components no longer available. The Tau Ceti mining operations that produce quantum processing materials for half the galaxy? Human territory now. Captain Vasquez was standing now, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. Not threatening, just present. Chen saw several other human delegates making similar gestures. You're talking about economic warfare, Coordinator Fluxnam accused, its form flowing rapidly between shapes. No, Chen said. We're talking about independence. The difference is that we're not trying to harm anyone. We're just no longer providing services to people who think we need their permission to exist. Council Prime Zixthala managed to restore some order to the chamber. Ambassador, surely this decision is premature. The Council has not yet voted on the moratorium proposal. The Council doesn't need to vote, Chen replied. The proposal itself tells us everything we need to know about how galactic civilization views humanity. 50 years of protective isolation, while you study us like interesting microorganisms. He began walking toward the chamber's exit, and the human delegation rose to follow him. You want to know about human expansion patterns? Chen called back to the chamber. We expand because we have to, because our people need resources and worlds and futures for their children. Because standing still in a dangerous universe is the same as dying slowly. He stopped at the threshold and turned back one last time. You've been at peace for 4,000 years. You've forgotten what it means to struggle, to fight, to take what you need to survive. You think 50 years is a reasonable time frame for anything because you have the luxury of thinking in centuries. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper that the chamber's acoustic systems amplified throughout the hall. Humans don't have that luxury. We never have. And we've just remembered that we never needed it. As the human delegation left the chamber, Chen could hear the chaos erupting behind them. Urgent communications between allied species, demands for emergency sessions, calls for immediate action to prevent economic collapse. In the corridor outside, Captain Vasquez fell into step beside him. That went well, she said dryly. Better than expected, Chen admitted. Though I suspect the interesting part is just beginning. How long do you think before they try to enforce their authority? Vasquez asked. Chen thought about the Galactic Council's enforcement mechanisms. Economic sanctions that would now hurt them more than humanity. Blockades that would cut off their own access to human-controlled resources. Military action against a species that had just demonstrated it was tired of being polite. Not long, he said. They'll probably start with diplomatic pressure, then move to limited sanctions when they realize how much of their infrastructure depends on human industry. And when that doesn't work, Chen smiled grimly. Then they'll discover what humans are like when we stop asking permission. Behind them, the Galactic Council chambers filled with the sounds of a civilization realizing that its careful, peaceful order had just developed a crack. In conference rooms throughout Station Prime, emergency committees were forming, military advisors were being consulted, and economic analysts were calculating the cost of humanity's withdrawal. They were about to learn that some prices were too high to pay. In the docking bay where the human ships waited, crews were already preparing for departure. Not a retreat, but a return to purely human space, where they could operate without oversight, without committees, without having to ask permission for every decision. The Galactic Council had spent 4,000 years believing that peace was the natural state of civilized beings. They were about to discover what happened when they tried to impose that belief on a species that had never known peace. The stars were about to get much quieter and much more dangerous. 3 weeks after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Indomitable, watching her tactical displays with the satisfaction of a chess master seeing 20 moves ahead. Around her, the bridge hummed with efficient activity as her crew coordinated what would later be remembered as the most decisive military campaign in galactic history. It had taken the Council exactly 18 days to move from diplomatic protests to economic sanctions to what they euphemistically called enforcement action. 18 days of increasingly frantic attempts to maintain their trade networks without human industrial support. 18 days of watching their carefully balanced economy wobble as 37% of their rare earth elements simply vanished from the market. They had finally decided that humans needed to be taught a lesson about the consequences of defying galactic authority. Admiral, called Commander Rodriguez from the communication station. We're receiving transmission from the Council Enforcement Fleet. Admiral Carinthal is demanding our surrender. Chen smiled coldly. She had been expecting this call. Put him through. The main display flickered, and the image of Admiral Carinthal appeared. The Crystari officer's geometric form was pulsing with what Chen had learned to recognize as righteous anger, his crystalline structure refracting light in sharp aggressive patterns. Admiral Chen. Carinthtal's translated voice carried harmonics of authority that had intimidated spacefaring species for millennia. You will surrender your fleet and submit to Council authority. Your species' violation of galactic law cannot be permitted to continue. Chen studied the alien admiral with the same detached interest she might show a particularly aggressive insect. Admiral Carinthtal, you're commanding 17 ships from 6 different species, none of which have seen actual combat in over 1,000 years. Are you certain this is the conversation you want to have? Carinthtal's form flashed with patterns Chen recognized as surprise. Admiral, you face the combined might of galactic civilization. Your 31 ships cannot 47 ships, Chen corrected gently. You're looking at outdated intelligence. We've had 3 weeks to position assets. She touched a control, and additional tactical displays activated around Carinthal's image. The alien admiral's form went still as he processed what he was seeing. Impossible, he whispered. Chen nodded to Commander Rodriguez. Show him the long-range sensors. New displays materialized, showing sensor readings from across the local star group. In 17 different systems, Galactic Council installations were going dark. Not destroyed, not attacked, simply offline. Every communication relay in the hegemony trade network, Chen said conversationally. Every automated trading post in the Crystalline Compact's border systems, every mining operation in Neo-Aquatic Federation space, all of them are now under human control. Carinthtal's crystalline form was cycling through rapid color changes, committing acts of war against peaceful civilizations. No, Chen replied, her voice dropping to the tone she used when explaining obvious concepts to junior officers. We're demonstrating what humans are capable of when we stop asking permission. She gestured to the tactical displays. Your enforcement fleet took 6 days to organize, 3 days to reach the system, and another day to get into position. Typical galactic planning timeframes. Very thorough, very careful, very predictable. Chen's smile turned predatory. Human planning works differently.
While you were organizing committees to discuss organizing committees, we were moving our pieces into position
While you were debating the legal framework for enforcement action, we were already surrounding your infrastructure.
This is impossible, Kyrinthal insisted. Our intelligence networks would have detected such massive fleet movements. Your intelligence networks, Chen said, are designed to track the kind of careful, methodical expansion that galactic civilization considers normal. Ships moving in formation, following established trade routes, filing proper navigation plans with traffic control. She touched another control, and the displays showed human ship movements over the past 3 weeks. Not the orderly processions that galactic civilization expected, but streams of small, fast vessels moving through uncharted space, following routes that no other species would consider navigable. Humans don't move like other species, Admiral. We don't follow trade routes when we can cut through asteroid fields. We don't file navigation plans when we can use gravitational slings to reach impossible velocities. We don't announce our intentions when we can simply appear where we need to be. Kyrinthal was studying the movement patterns with what Chen recognized as growing horror. You sent civilian vessels through uncharted space. The casualties alone. 0 casualties. Chen interrupted. Because humans are very good at navigating dangerous places. We've been doing it since before we left our home system. The alien admiral's form had gone almost transparent with shock. But the risks are acceptable when the alternative is allowing other species to decide whether we deserve to exist, Chen said flatly. She stood up from her command chair and walked closer to the display, showing Kyrinthal image. Admiral, let me explain something about human military doctrine. For 4,000 years, galactic civilization has maintained peace through careful negotiation, diplomatic pressure, and the occasional show of force. Your fleets exist to intimidate, to demonstrate resolve, to convince potential aggressors that resistance is futile. Chen gestured around the bridge of the Indomitable where her crew continued their work with calm efficiency. Human fleets exist to win wars. Every system, every weapon, every tactical doctrine has been designed by people who understand that sometimes negotiation fails and you have to actually fight. Our ships aren't built to look impressive in formation. They're built to kill other ships and keep killing them until there's nobody left to fight. Kyrinthal's form solidified slightly, taking on the angular patterns Chen had learned indicated determination. Admiral, you cannot threaten the entire galactic community. The economic disruption alone will affect billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Yes, Chen agreed, it will, which is why I'm about to make you an offer. She returned to her command chair, settling back with the relaxed posture of someone who held all the cards. Humanity withdraws from all Galactic Council territories and trade agreements. We keep the systems we've already claimed, plus the 17 systems we've just occupied. In return, we don't disrupt any more of your infrastructure. You're demanding territorial concessions under threat of violence, Kyrinthal accused. No, Chen said patiently. We're offering to stop taking territory we could easily occupy. There's a difference. She touched her control panel, and new displays appeared showing the positions of human fleets throughout the local spiral arm. Admiral, human expansion over the past 50 years has been limited by our desire to integrate peacefully with galactic civilization. We moved slowly, asked permission, submitted to reviews and committees and endless bureaucratic processes because we hoped we could find a way to coexist. Chen's voice hardened. That limitation no longer exists. The displays shifted, showing projected human expansion patterns unconstrained by galactic law, systems that could be claimed, resources that could be extracted, colonies that could be established. The scope was staggering. Within 5 years, unconstrained human expansion would give us control of 40% of the habitable systems in this spiral arm. Within 10 years, we would be the dominant species in local space. Within 20 years, galactic civilization as you know it would be a historical footnote. Kyrinth's form was cycling through rapid color changes that Chen's briefings had taught her indicated extreme distress. You're talking about the conquest of galactic civilization. No, Chen corrected. I'm talking about what happens when humans stop pretending that we need permission to grow. We're not trying to conquer anyone, Admiral. We're just no longer accepting artificial limits on our expansion. She leaned forward in her command chair. The choice is yours. Accept human independence and maintain control of your existing territories, or try to enforce galactic authority and watch your civilization collapse under the weight of a war you're not equipped to fight. Admiral Chen, Kyrinthal said slowly, you cannot expect the Council to simply abandon 4,000 years of galactic law. I expect the Council to make the same choice every successful civilization eventually makes, Chen replied. Adapt or become irrelevant. She stood up again and walked to the main display. Admiral,
Your enforcement fleet represents the combined military might of 6 different species.
17 ships, carefully coordinated, following tactics that have maintained galactic peace for millennia.
Chen smiled, and Chiranthal's form recoiled slightly. My fleet represents humanity's response to the possibility that we might have to fight for our right to exist. 47 ships designed by people who understand that sometimes peace is impossible and you have to kill your enemies before they kill you.
She gestured to her tactical officer, and weapon locks appeared on every ship in Chiranthal's fleet. You have 30 minutes to withdraw your fleet and report back to the Council. Tell them that humanity is no longer interested in negotiations, committees, or diplomatic solutions. Tell them that we've moved beyond asking permission.
Chiranthal's form was now completely transparent, a sign of shock that Chen had never seen before. Admiral, if we withdraw, the Council will have no choice but to declare humanity a hostile species. Then they'll be declaring war on a species that's been preparing for war since before they developed spaceflight, Chen said.
I don't recommend it. She returned to her command chair and settled back with the relaxed posture of someone who had already won. 29 minutes, Admiral.
The display went dark as Chiranthal cut the connection.
Around the bridge, Chen's crew continued their work with the same calm efficiency they had maintained throughout the conversation. Admiral, called Commander Rodriguez, we're detecting movement from the enforcement fleet. They're withdrawing to the system perimeter. Chen nodded. She had expected as much. Chiranthal's was a competent officer, and competent officers didn't commit suicide by attacking forces they couldn't defeat. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Begin Phase 2. Throughout human space, the message went out simultaneously. Mining operations that had been operating under Galactic Council regulations switched to purely human oversight. Colony ships that had been following carefully planned settlement patterns broke off to claim systems that galactic law would never have permitted. Research stations began studying technologies that the Council had classified as too dangerous for general development. In the space of 6 hours, humanity transformed from a species seeking integration with galactic civilization to an independent power operating by its own rules. The enforcement fleet's withdrawal was reported to the Galactic Council 8 hours later. The emergency session that followed lasted for 3 days and accomplished nothing beyond confirming what Admiral Chen had already told them. Galactic civilization, built on 4,000 years of careful diplomacy and peaceful negotiation, had no idea how to respond to a species that simply refused to accept their authority. In the weeks that followed, several more species would attempt to enforce Council authority over human territories. They would discover what Admiral Chiranthal had learned in his conversation with Admiral Chen. Humans had stopped asking for permission. The stars were finally quiet. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a galaxy holding its breath, waiting to see what humanity would build in the spaces they had claimed for themselves. In conference rooms across galactic civilization, emergency committees debated response strategies that no longer mattered. Economic analysts calculated losses from human withdrawal that couldn't be recovered. Military advisors planned campaigns against an enemy that had already moved beyond their reach. And in human space, families continued the work of building homes among the stars. Children grew up learning that the universe was large enough for anyone willing to claim their place in it. And engineers designed ships for voyages to worlds that no other species even knew existed. The Great Silence had begun, and humanity was finally free to make as much noise as they wanted. When humans lose their patience, the stars go quiet. HFY.